National Phoenix this year. And I have been a Soroptimist for close to 15 years. And Mary Greer was my colleague at the Attorney General's office, and she's the one who invited me into Soroptimist. So for everyone, I'm really delighted to introduce Emily as our speaker today. Emily happens to be my neighbor, but as I got to know Emily, I learned a lot about her, and she's really a remarkable woman who embodies Soroptimist values in her life and her career. So Emily is the hardworking mom of 4 kids, Andrew, Chase, Scarlett, and Cora, who I think are range in age between 4 and 13, unless the little one had a birthday. So Emily has spent a decade as a program manager for the Arizona Department of Health Services in the WIC program. So I think in Emily's work, she served a lot of the same young mothers that Soroptimist serves through programs like our Live Your Dream program. And of course, in the Grand Soroptimist tradition, Emily is looking to aim even higher in her career, and she recently embarked on a journey to become a physician's assistant, which with 4 kids, oh my goodness, but she's doing it. So Emily's going to talk with us today about her work with the Arizona Department of Health Services. So without further ado, here is Emily Davis.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to say no pressure whatsoever after hearing all of the immense experience and knowledge and professions. I feel like I'm looking at the Jacquelines of all trade here. It is just such an absolute honor. I'm so incredibly humbled that Shelley even extended an invitation, and then hearing her kind words, I am at a loss of words in this moment. So let me try and pull it together. I'll tell you, I'm a hot mess today. I've been 3 weeks without seeing my kids. Tomorrow they will be in town, and I am over the moon elated. So I'm trying to rally and keep it all together. We'll see how it goes. Let me pull up my screen and share with you all. So again, I stay on point with what I should be saying in this moment. And everybody, are you able to see the screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I see head nods. Thank you for the verbal. I love, I heard, I think it was it Terry that said she doesn't mute? I just absolutely love that. I'm like, please, it's so awkward not to hear responses in this virtual world. I will just full disclosure, a little piece of vulnerability. I had never heard of your organization prior to Shelley's invitation. And as I looked into it, my mind was just absolutely blown. The phenomenal work, the objectives overall that your organization is doing, and the length of time that the organization has been together is just really amazing. And then I started pulling in pieces of some other pivotal milestones that have happened in the past year or so. And so I do want to share some of that with you as we go through today's presentation. I will try and keep things concise and not go on many tangents. I really appreciate Shelley introducing my kids first and foremost as a core component of me and my personality and my role. Right now, I am blissfully unemployed, and that is said as a double-edged sword because I am also freaking out as a student, and definitely a non-traditional student mid-career change in this moment. And so I wanted to put, instead of any kind of affiliation, I wanted to put, I'm just another mom out there hustling at this point, hustling to achieve and trying to be kind of that beacon for my brood, but also seeing how I can provide as much touch points out there for those in either like fields, like communities, like areas. I just want to have the conversations, because the moment that we're able to have conversations about what one mom may be hustling with, what one piece of education may be, what one social service support out there or resource out there, it just has the ability to replicate out an additional knowledge and understanding. So much like Shelley sharing your organization with me. And so Regina, I also want to give you a total shout out as being that full-time student. Get to it. You're doing amazing things. And if you do have that extra seat on your flight, you just let me know. I will quickly hop on a flight and come back to Arizona. So I do, again, I shared with you, I have my shameless pics here of my kids throughout. Here's my brood. That is Cora being the youngest. Scarlett is 7, Chase is 10, and Andrew is 13. And I have this quote on here. This is actually a quote. It was a Turkish playwright and poet, and it's a more recent quote. I think this came out just a couple of years ago, but it is really, it's a pivotal quote as far as I never started out to be where I'm at today. I never started out thinking, especially thinking about in high school, when you start trying to pull yourself together and think about what I'm going to do professionally and how I'm going to be a human in this world and a functioning human in this world. It never came out that, you know what, I think I'm going to be a lactation consultant. And that is the credentialing I hold as of today. I am a lactation consultant, but I actually started out in a very different field. And I want to address that because that does have some play in every single move I've made since that point. So I did start out in culinary. I was at a resort, got interested in culinary, was actually their culinary or their catering director for a little bit, and was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I had no formal training. I had no business training. It was a contract that I was hosting. And so I decided to go to culinary school, which had a component, it was a 12-month program, and it had a component on how to basically function as a small business provider as well. And so I enjoyed culinary. I worked in various capacities of that for a few years. And then I became pregnant with that tall guy there in the middle, who's now actually taller than me. And that's why I love this quote, because water is the most perfect traveler, because when it travels, it becomes the path itself. The pregnancy with him set me on a completely different path than being back of the house in the kitchen, working super late nights, completely opposite hours of my significant other. And, you know, it was kind of like, what are we going to do for benefits? What am I going to do once he is in my arms? Because this role I'm in currently is not conducive of what I aspire to be as a mother and what I see as my philosophy to parenting. And so I returned to school at that point. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But each subsequent little human you see on this screen here has kind of helped me carve out new paths as I've gone along, and also helped me with my interactions with anyone, family that I've interacted with in Arizona, any one presentation I've given in another state or for another organization, and then also any staff member that I've come in contact with for training purposes or mentoring purposes. All of these little humans here have helped me just continue to find my path. And so I don't know if this was necessary, but I do come from that, it sounds like many of you do as well, that state world where we have to have some sort of declaration, especially when there's any kind of continuing ed, which it didn't sound like there was here, but I just wanted to say I have absolutely no affiliation around this conversation today. I will share with you some of my experiences working at state, working at a local agency, working for the WIC program, but truly there is nothing to declare. I also was thinking about, again, looking into your organization and just the longevity that you all have had. And the amazing milestone of hearing 100 years. And I started thinking about, and I have a picture, again, my shameless picture here of us in Pearls. This is Wear Pearls Day last January, that pivotal moment where we were seeing an elected female into a position of power. And that was coming after 100 years post when the female body here in the US were able to have that voting right. And so I just so wanted to adorn myself in pearls that day. And then I sent both of my girls to school in pearls that day as well, because it was such a significant piece of history happening last January. But definitely one declaration I want to share with you all is that Wonder Women are 100% real. Shelley very much so is a Wonder Woman. I hope she understands how wonderful she is. I hope that you all, in the work that you do in this volunteering capacity to lift up additional women out there, that is Wonder Woman work in of itself. I got to know Shelley, one being distally located next to her, right next door, approximately next door, but also she left me this lovely letter, and it was such a surprise letter during this crazy moment of everybody shut down and stay home and get in your bubbles. And I heard the doorbell, or I heard the knock, and I found this beautiful letter from Shelley just sharing all of her amazing talents and how she was willing to share those talents during this time of virtual teaching as well with my children. And I was like, oh my gosh, who is this Wonder Woman living next door to me? And does she have a secret like Wonder Woman cave underneath her home that for some reason was included in her floor plan and not this floor plan? It was just absolutely amazing. So again, I want to say the organization, as I looked into it, just really blew me away so much more. And knowing that you all are in it and the work that you all are doing, and knowing Shelley, I just cannot imagine how much amazing attributes you have done for the community around Arizona. And so again, I looked through it, it absolutely sung to my heart. I saw that 100-year mark, and then just wanted to say around the wording itself, hearing the best for women. And I feel like having that mantra included in the work and kind of bringing that into every schema of some of the professional aspects that I've had and educational aspects I have, and that I'll be able to hopefully share with you all today in a concise amount of time. I just really appreciated hearing and seeing that this stated best for women. So I looked over the core values. I know all of you are very much well aware of them, but then even the stratification of some of those values coming out is just so amazing. These targeted objectives truly come down to a lot of the work I heard you talk about, but also some of the things that I may share with you about the WIC program and about some of the state opportunities. So I want you to hang in there. Here's one of my pirated images because it is, I don't know if you've ever seen the kids or the adults that get into these harnesses and they're on the giant trampoline and they really shoot up high into the air. I'm going to ping pong around as far as I hope to give, and I'm not even going to say a 10,000 foot perspective on anything, but maybe a 30-foot perspective on things, and some that are a little bit more closer because they are my own personal experiences. And so I just wanted to share this image to talk about. It's going to ping pong and jump around. And so I shared with you, I went to culinary school. It was via SEC. I was a fighting artichoke for my culinary school. I completed that. I worked, I love Anthony Bourdain talked about working as a chef is much like being on a pirate ship and being a part of a pirate crew. And that's very much so relatable. So as I was a crew member of a pirate ship for a moment, I became pregnant and decided we need to figure out something that's going to do a little bit better for us in our situation. And so I wanted to complement my work in culinary with nutrition, and I decided to attend Arizona State. I was definitely a non-traditional at that time. I entered into ASU, I want to say I was 26, 27, and just pregnant with my first guy. I delivered him, took a semester off. I attended some classes with him in arms even. I have pics of a professor holding him during one of my classes. It was really an interesting time. But the aspect that I want to share with you all is during that time, it was also happening, a recession was going on. My husband was a small business owner at that time. I was now a mother with a toddler and a student. And so we were in a very fragile economic space. There was no social services programs that I was aware of, and I actually very much so would have qualified at that time, which was frustrating to learn after the fact, you know, the hindsight aspect of things. And I was utilizing very limited funds, not as wisely as I could have had somebody had been an advocate for me or understood maybe our situation a little bit more, or maybe if I even opened up to seek out that advocacy piece or understanding piece. I would go to food banks for our family at that time, and actually it was definitely quite an experience, and many a times a humbling experience, because I would see some of my fellow students actually volunteering and working within the food banks. And it was really interesting to have some of those interactions because they wouldn't approach me as I was there participating in a food bank, and they were there working in a food bank, even though we were both in the same nutrition program. So that was pretty insightful. I utilized the health services there on the campus for anything that I needed. I utilized community mom support groups, which was really a huge factor in the overall mental health of what does juggling being a new mom and then eventually a mom of a toddler and being a full-time student, but also the stress of where we were economically. My husband did apply for, because small business owner, did not survive the recession period. He ended up applying for unemployment, and he did get the card, and he was able to hustle out a job before we ever received any kind of funding from that. But he utilized his card from DES as a bookmark for years after we had made the application, just as a reminder of how fragile things can really get, and how displaced we can all become. From there, I graduated and I started working in WIC. I worked in WIC starting in January. It was January 2nd or 3rd of 2010. And working at WIC was such a phenomenal opportunity. I actually ended up ditching my community mom groups and my support groups because I found this new support, not only with those colleagues that I was working with within a clinic environment there, but also those that are, let me do a time check, those that were coming in and seeking services, because I was hearing some of their same challenges that I could relate to. And I was like, oh my gosh, so tell me, how did you navigate this? Or tell me some of the successes that you have seen. And we were really able to build a lot of great reciprocity in that knowledge exchange and support. From a local agency, I worked within a hospital. I worked there at the clinic. There is, for those of you, and I'll be very brief on this one, and I'll move on to the next slide so we could talk a little bit more about some of those services. There's over 107 clinics throughout Arizona ready to support families. So I definitely want to plug that. And again, I'm no longer affiliated, but I will always cheerlead. I am a WIC ride or die kind of girl. I worked at a local agency for about 1.5 years, and then I was recruited up to the state offices, which I heard many other state employees that retired. I can't call myself retired, but I will say I was a 10-year strong ADHS worker. And while there was an opportunity to attend U of A and learn more about maternal health child epidemiology. And so I was able to utilize this information, and it was 100% scholarship, which was awesome for healthcare workers and health department workers, and utilize that on how can we support some of the population needs that we have and some of the staff needs that we have, and really pull out some of those numbers, because we know numbers can really drive a lot of grants. And then we won't talk about the other things on this slide, just based on time. I think I have until 12:30, if I'm not mistaken. So please correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
You have a little bit more time than that.
Okay, cool. So WIC, it is nationwide. It is something, it's federally funded. It's been around since '74. Really great program. Again, I will cheerlead for WIC from coast to coast. It's in every single state. It's in territories, and then it's also on bases throughout the world as well. So a lot of great things with WIC. There's some nice legislation pushes and advocacy happening right now on the national level that I really hope to see come out, because it's looking to expand services. And that would be expanding the time that any adult, mother, pregnant, the adult that is eligible for WIC to extend the amount of time that they are eligible, and then extend the age of children up to 6 years of age, because not all children go to school in kindergarten right in 5th grade, and they may still be missing out on some of those check-ins and touch points, especially around food support and nutrition support. So I hope to see some of the advocacy really working out. Some other elements of WIC that is really a nationwide push, and one that I am just so much vested in. It definitely resonates a lot with me, and I can relate to, is the maternal mortality and severe morbidities work that the WIC program has done on the national level. We were shoulder to shoulder with some congresswomen last year, really advocating for the Momnibus that was going on, a lot of women's health initiatives coming out, and how WIC, being the community support, can really help in what some of those clinical outcomes could be for women out there. And especially knowing that WIC, this is just such a phenomenal number. WIC is serving approximately half of all infants that are born in the US. So there is a ton of families that are eligible and being provided services by WIC. WIC's going to provide services around nutrition, specific allocating food packages and specific denominations of money with any monthly package, but also there's going to be the counseling aspect of it, referrals to it, and then also a lot of breastfeeding support and education throughout pregnancy and postpartum for those dyads out there. There is also, along those lines of what WIC is nationally, here in Arizona, there is a really great resource and avenue for families that are maybe questioning what breastfeeding, lactation, what infant feeding, and what some of those dynamics are. So there is the Arizona Breastfeeding Hotline. Arizona is one of 4 states that has a 24-hour hotline, and it is half funded with WIC, half funded with maternal child health funds. Because of that, it's open to anyone and everybody. It doesn't have to be exclusive to WIC. And so that's where, unfortunately, it's not the clearest image. I'll tell you, last night when I was dropping this image into the slide, it looked crystal clear. And now in the daylight with glasses on, it definitely is not. But if you're interested, or you know any pregnant family out there, any family just wanting to explore infant feeding practices, there is, if you type in breastfeeding Arizona, this logo pops up and it gives you the resource with website and telephone number. And so I went Mountain Park Health Center. I do want to give them a great plug. They were the local agency that I worked for with direct services for clients out there. Mountain Park Health Center is one of 6 health centers that have a WIC contract. So they are the ones providing those direct services. A great attribute to having a health center involved with a social service program like this is because there's the ability for those warm referrals. Mountain Park is federally qualified, and so they have sliding scale. They also have the ability that if somebody has no way to pay, they're going to figure out a way to still provide healthcare services. And so there's really that access to ensure positive health outcomes and support for anyone coming into them being that federally qualified piece. And of course, if there's insurance, they will always take that payment. From the local agency aspect of it, is when I transferred over into the Department of Health Services. And so that's the administrator of the WIC programs. There's a total of 20 throughout the state in all counties, and again, within those health centers. And the department really being, and I'm very sure that many of you are very familiar with grantee and grantor, right? We're receiving funds, but also allocating some of those funds out into various components of support and services. Not only for WIC, but some other programs as well. So I had the privilege of working with sister bureaus to build that up. Now, in this time period, we were also able to develop IBCLC mentoring. IBCLC, if you've never heard of it, which I'm not surprised if you haven't, not many people have heard that specific credentialing or acronym of it. It is those international board certified lactation consultants. It's the only official credentialing for a lactation consultant. And it's kind of hard to get. It's 1,000 clinical hours. It's 90 hours lactation specific education. It is all 14 basic sciences. And really, it's the biggest thing is trying to collect those 1,000 hours of contact and support and counseling. So having somebody mentor you along is very helpful, but also it makes it a little bit less daunting to go about. And so this past year, I was able to mentor 13 women across Arizona to prepare for sitting down and taking this exam. It's a 200 question exam, and then they're eligible every 5 years to re-exam. So I am actually hitting my 10-year and very excited about that. But a piece that also really kind of works into some of those objectives that I saw that your organization has is really kind of building in some of that economic security with some of the offerings here, but also really building in that support in the education piece, because we were also able to develop, while I was within the department, a 32-hour course around lactation education. And I've provided that to hospitals, to peer counselors, to promodoras, to WIC staff, to basically anybody that has any interest in what infant feeding is. They were eligible to attend at no cost. And so that is, again, just lifting up people through education and support. And then that mentoring piece. I'm hopeful. I did leave the department just a few weeks ago, but I'm hopeful they will continue on with, we were building up an internship as well to help provide those 1,000 hours, because that can be a lot. So I'm really hopeful that that continues on. Again, if you have anybody you ever experience that's interested in either learning for themselves about what infant feeding is, or learning to become that person, please contact the hotline and try and navigate them that way. All right, so another shameless plug here. This is us in attendance to the 2018 Women's March. And I just wanted to share this because one, I just absolutely love the picture, and I love my sweet baby there that's wearing a History Maker shirt. But really, I just wanted to share with you about, yes, it is definitely about how to lift up, provide any kind of intervention in communities of need and need of support, but also kind of building up some of the framework and schema for the up and coming generation. And so I try and insert my boys everywhere I can to shift hopefully some ideologies for this upcoming generation. And so they had a blast at the Women's March. They really enjoyed seeing the support around all of the women there. We had discussions around really deepening the understanding and the historical challenges. And again, thinking about it, it's only been 100 years since that mark of, okay, so I guess we can all vote now. And then the VP coming in this past year, it was just a really nice way to continue our, I don't know if you want to say necessarily inclusiveness, but the foundation of how involvement of all will help lift up. We also, we have extended ourselves out in a variety of ways to provide information on different dynamics, different relationships, different situations. Recently, we were involved in helping a mother move her 4 children. So she was pregnant with her 5th, who is fleeing a domestic violence situation. That is something that I hope sticks with all of my kids, as far as there was a situation out here we were able to help and assist in, and it's not an uncommon situation, right? So it was building up conversation. And then, so that's why I wanted to share the inclusion of bringing all my littles here, as well as my husband, to the Women's March and having some of those conversations. And sometimes they're more courageous conversations as well, if that makes sense to anyone. Let's see. Oh, other things that I wanted to talk about, along with some of these pieces about just promotion of inclusiveness, and even some of the humility and humbleness that we can bring in was just other aspects that we've included, volunteering through, I don't know if you've heard of You Mom, but it's an amazing organization as well, looking to support homeless families. There are evenings, if you ever have a Tuesday evening that you want to get out and about, they have Read to Me. And so you show up and you're reading to kids, it's ages 8 and under, I believe, to allow their parents a little bit of time within the assisted living area, not assisted living, but their provided living area. And the kids get to come out and interact, and you get to spend time reading a book with a kid. And that is a pretty fun night, in my opinion there. Other things I wanted to just, again, shameless showing of what compassion when you're leading and modeling. Some of that is my boys, without any reservation, to just lay down in the middle of this march and hug each other and kiss each other. It made my day. So as all of this was happening around us, they are just hanging out on a beautiful January day there. And so trying to rally through all of that information and keep it concise and distill out some of my, I don't know what I'm doing in this crazy journey. It's the experiences that have helped me kind of navigate the journey. And each one of the families that I interacted with while being at the local agency, each one of the programs I interacted with at the state agency, and then now, as I'm moving forward and working within more community health settings and seeing a lot of, right now I'm working with a lot of the migrant families here in California, and it is just so amazing. And I can't wait to see what other branches are out there for me, what other paths may happen as I continue on this journey. But it is definitely something to just pull in on. We don't know our lives at this moment, how it's going to keep going, but I highly encourage even those of you that have said you're retired, I hope that you're continuing to pull in those experiences and find a pathway for your journeys. So that is basically all I have, Shelley. I don't know if anybody has questions about any of the chaos I've just thrown at you. I hope you have questions about the WIC program or any other more tangible thing that I may offer.
Yeah, Emily, this is Shelley. How many families in Arizona does the WIC program serve?
So it fluctuates. There's many a number of people in the Bureau that are just looking day to day even. I believe last year there was 180 families that were enrolled in WIC. And that was families, not persons.
In the state or the county or?
In the state.
180.
180 families, or 180,000.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes more sense.
You're like, that was a lot of funding for 180 people.
180,000 makes a lot of sense. Do you think the majority of people or families who are eligible for WIC actually apply? Or do you think there's a large population out there that may not even know that they're eligible?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So what they were able to extrapolate from a lot of the surveys that we've taken, we've had baseline surveys since 2011, 2012, able to determine about half of those eligible are not participating. And that's a pretty significant number. It may be lack of knowledge. I can honestly share with you. That's why I didn't participate, because I didn't know about it. All of a sudden I was working for WIC and I was like, oh my gosh, I could have been here throughout the past 3 years easily and seen the support. And I think that we definitely would have had a lot of advantageous pieces come out of that. So there is a big need to promote further. You may see around Phoenix, there's now billboards happening. I'm excited to know that they are posted around to bring some knowledge to it. There's also a misconception on eligibility. And when I was working within the hospital, I would go into rooms to see new mothers. And I remember distinctly, there was one situation where The mother and baby were just laying in the hospital bed. The beautiful overhead lighting was coming down. It was almost angelic. I mean, the scene of a mom and a new baby is one that is just beautiful and heart melting. And grandma had come up to me and says, "Oh, who are you?" And I said, "I'm Emily. I'm with WIC. I'm just here to see if there's anything I can do to help you with, enroll you." Wanted to just kind of get my spiel out there, right? The hook of it all. And the mother had said, or the grandmother, mom's mom, had said to me, "Oh, she's a teacher. She's not eligible for a WIC," and kind of hustled me out and shut the door. So in my electronic records, I could see absolutely she was eligible. So there is this misconception of what eligibility truly was. Now, that being said, eligibility is 121% above federal poverty line. And depending on the number of people in any one household, that is going to be a varying number. The more people in the house, the more eligibility there is.
Kara Jackson has a question.
Yeah, thank you. So other than obviously getting the word out about this program and the availability of it to more people, I'm curious, from your time that you served with the state, where were sort of the greatest opportunities where you might have thought, gosh, if just this changed, it could be so much more impactful, or just this, whether it was an administrative rule, a policy, whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, Tara, there is almost a trick question involved with that, because you said with your state or your role with state, and I feel like many of you have probably experienced the beautifulness of bureaucracy, as well as when passionate opinions come in and derail the best intentions. And so there's going to be variations over the past 10 years that I can identify where perhaps an initiative would have been more successful had XYZ had happened, or had ABC not been involved. One pivotal piece that is something unifying across Arizona, across even infant feeding, and especially it goes into maternal mortalities and morbidities, it goes into prenatal care, is just the conversation around normative infant feeding, because normative infant feeding, being mammalian based, actually has protective factors with maternal mortalities and health outcomes for both mom and baby, which is going to lead to those later in life health outcomes. When I talk with hospital systems, when I talk to mothers, when I talk to WIC staff, one just like resounding thing that always occurs is when babies are offered alternative feeding than breast milk within the hospital setting. That seems to be a derailment across. And if you look at even CDC has a ton of information out there around this, that seems to be a derailment in what those potential rates could have been. WIC being heavily funded around providing that breastfeeding education. Should the promotion of WIC go out there, we may see that specific intervention happen, but it also has to be a policy based somewhere along the lines. I have elevated policies in the past, even as far as to our governor's office, just, hey, sign this proclamation. And everything seemed like it was on board with just signing a proclamation around promotion, until the last minute there was something that changed and it was no longer an available promotion piece. So that was a lot. There was a lot of layers in that, because there's not one perfect answer. I will tell you, one of my friends sent me a shirt that says, "I'm an introvert unless you ask me about breastfeeding." And I absolutely relate to that. I can be as quiet as a mouse, but we start talking breastfeeding and it just goes on and on.
Does anyone else have any questions for Emily? I will say that like Emily, when I got out of the military and came back home to Arizona with a 19-month-old to start my studies at ASU and having little to no income, I probably would have been eligible for these programs that Emily is talking about. And I really had no idea. And then the other I think barrier to me was, I'll be fine. I don't need any help from anybody. I will get through this, and because I'm tough and it'll be fine. So I think that there are a lot of barriers, I think, and stigmas around actually like seeking help, and then having to be the welfare mother, right? And all the stigma that's that gets attached to that label. And that seems to me to be probably a significant barrier to actually people seeking out pride. Tammy says, yeah, a barrier for people seeking services. So Emily, in your experience, did that come up, and what really did your agency do to try to combat that?
So absolutely, I feel like you are hitting a nail on the head as far as the stigma associated with it. I've witnessed it even getting in line behind a woman that was pulling out the WIC checks to pay for her groceries, and hearing somebody say, "Oh, great." And the cashier was like, "It's WIC, it's going to be a minute." Not helping the situation whatsoever. And then people are bailing out of the line like, "Oh my gosh, another WIC mom out there." And here she is trying to do her best, trying to get food in her house and take care of her kids. Like, how can you possibly fault that? A few years ago, there was a big push because one of stigma to it, and then also just moving forward to ease of access. There was a big push by USDA to provide electronic benefits. The really beautiful thing about that is it looks like a debit card. Promoting that aspect increased caseload because people weren't having to sort out all of these giant checks and place this transaction with this check and this transaction with this check. It was very overwhelming to try and do. It was very there was so many nuances involved with just shopping that it made it more of a challenge than a success oftentimes. So now it can be all one purchase utilizing this debit card, and any extra funds, if she decided to buy something additional that wasn't involved in the food package, she just pays for that separately or says, "You know what, I don't need that," and puts it to the side. So that helped a lot with building caseload. In this past displacement of the pandemic, there's also been an increase. Definitely, we see some economic instability in general, but the ability to provide virtual services was a huge help because there's other barriers out there than feeling the judgment or the perhaps negative outlook on seeking out services such as WIC. And so now there is an option for virtual services, much like telehealth, but it's WIC online. Basically, they launch their phone, they launch their computer, and have access to a WIC counselor, a dietitian, a breastfeeding educator right there within the comfort of their home. It's alleviating the barrier of having to get children out of the door. I can be late by myself, but you include in those 4 additional people with me, my +4s, and it's a hustle to get out of the door. So that's alleviated. Also, if there was any concerns with traffic, and then thinking about the summertime, who really wants to haul everybody out to any appointment, and especially to go sit in a waiting room for perhaps a prolonged amount of time. And so it alleviated a lot of some of the barriers that were involved in seeking WIC services. I know that there were cases both when I was within the local agency and then working with staff when I was at the state agency, where people would be waiting an hour and a half in a waiting room to receive their services. And that's just, it's so unacceptable. Who wants to sit for an hour and a half in a waiting room for their 15-minute appointment, right?
Thank you, Emily. And Shelley, is there anything you'd like to add then before the program ends?
No, just thank you, Emily, for taking the time to talk with us, and good luck with your studies. And I'll see you when you pop back next door and all your back and forth travels to class.
Thank you. Yes, today was adventurous. There was a fire across the street, so it broke up my study time this morning. And then meeting with you all today at lunchtime has broken up a nice change up for me. So I'll get back to studying after this.
Thank you very much, Emily Davis. Pleasure to meet you. And good luck as you get your PA, your physician assistant.
Thank you. I appreciate it.